Recording and talking. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you. Oh, sorry. Thank you. I'll get started on. You'll have to bear with me. I don't do this very often, and I'm not very good with the microphone apparently, because I'm used to everybody being able to hear me. Welcome to this afternoon. It's nice to see the room full. That's perfect. Great. Like to see that. The first thing I guess we ask, we'll call this meeting to order. And do we have any pecuniary interests that need to be declared under the disclosure of Municipal Conflict Act? Seeing none, we'll move on. We'll have the minutes of the previous meeting. I'm assuming everybody had a chance to look at them, and they were moved by Councillor Elliott and seconded by Councillor Podnowitz to accept the meetings as read. Got the minutes up there. Oh, sorry, I have to say which one. Yes. Town of Minto, February 4th, 2025, regular council meeting be approved. All those in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. And we're now going to have a resolution moved by Councillor Dirksen, seconded by Councillor Gunson, to move us into a committee of adjustment. The Town of Minto Council convenes into committee of adjustment to, that's it. All those in favor? And that's passed as well. I'm going to call this public meeting to order. Any decision reached by this committee today cannot be used to set a precedent. Each application considered by the committee is dealt with on its own merits, and no two applications are exactly the same. Hello. The public hearing is to consider minor variance application MV-2025-01 JEM Freight Incorporated. And I am going to call on Secretary Treasurer McRobb to state the following information.
Thank you very much. The property subject to the proposed minor variance application is legally described as Part Lot 8, Herman and Bolton Survey 18-11, Wallace, as in R0741761, and is municipally known as 310 York Street, Palmerston, in the town of Minto. The subject property is approximately 1,031 meters squared, or 11,098 feet squared. The purpose and effect of the minor variance application is to provide relief from the rear yard setback requirement. This relief is requested as a condition of severance application B102/24, clause 12.2.1.6 of the Town of Minto's Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 01-86, as amended, requires a minimum rear yard setback of 7.6 meters, whereas 2.5 meters is proposed. Additional relief may be considered at this meeting. The notices were mailed to the property owners within 200 feet or 60 meters of the subject property, as well as the applicable agencies on February 7th, 2025, and posted on the subject property on February 7th, 2025. Reports and comments have been received from both the town of Minto and Wellington County. I can advise that I did not have any speakers registered to participate in this public hearing.
And we're going to call on Sama to present the report from the town of Minto at this time.
Thank you so much. The application before the Committee of Adjustment concerns a property in Palmerston located at 310 York Street and owned by GM Freight Incorporation. The committee may recall that this property previously came before them for a concept application to sever a vacant urban residential lot for a future development. The subject property is zoned R2, which means medium density residential, and which permits a variety of residential developments ranging from single family detached homes to 4-unit townhouse buildings. According to the town of Minto zoning bylaw, the front property line is defined as the shortest side of the lot facing a street. Currently, the frontage is along Regulon Street. However, after the severance, the lot with the existing house will shift its frontage to York Street. As a result, the current interior side yard will become the rear yard. As a condition of a consent, a minor variance is required to provide relief for the rear yard setback, reducing the minimum setback to 2.5 meters, while the zoning bylaw requires a 7.6 meter setback for the retired lot with the existing house. The application has been circulated to the normal agencies as well as property owners within 200 feet of the subject property, with no concern being brought forward to the town. Town of Minto staff are met and discussed the application and have no concern with the proposal. The application successfully meets the four tests of the minor variance under the planning act. It's deemed minor in nature and aligns with the general intent and purpose of both zoning bylaw and official plan. If the committee has any question for me, I would be glad to answer.
I think we'll get the rest of the reports, then we can open it up for questions later. So we're going to call on Haley Keast, agent for the applicant, to speak.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So yes, Haley Keast from Van Harten Surveying and representing our client and the property owner, John Martins. So as noted, the severance was recently approved, which created a new parcel for residential purposes along York Street. The retained parcel contains the existing dwelling, which is to remain, and a minor variance is required as a condition of the severance. So the subject property is zoned R2, and the zoning is met for the severed parcel. We show a proposed conceptual dwelling on there, and all the zoning is met. The retained parcel is a corner lot and due to the severance, the technical lot frontage shifts. So the frontage is to be the shorter of the two roads. So the frontage would now be York Street. The existing dwelling will continue to function with frontage and access along Ragland. And with the shift, the setbacks change. So what was originally the interior lot line is now considered the rear yard. So our request is for 2.5 meters versus 7.6 required for the existing house. But I would like to note that the interior side yard is 8.5 meters, and this will continue to function as the amenity space or what was the rear yard. And the remaining zoning requirements are met for the parcel. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. Are there any questions from any persons wishing to speak to the application to come forward? Seeing none, we'll ask for any questions by the committee. No, nobody has any questions. Then I guess we'll move to Secretary Treasurer McRobb to provide the resolution.
Thank you very much. Upon a resolution being carried or defeated, the notice of decision of the Committee of Adjustment is to be signed by all members of the Committee of Adjustment in favor of the decision. What I will read for you is the approval. That the Town of Minto Committee of Adjustment approves the application by
Mark.
I do have Mark in there, but it should be Gems. I do have by John Martin, but that should be Gems. Thank you. By Gems Freight Inc. For the property legally described as Part Lot 8, municipally known as 310 York Street, Palmerston, in the town of Minto, seeking relief from clause 12.2.1.6, permit a minimum rear yard setback of 2.5 meters.
Anyone wishing to receive a copy of the notice?
Oh, sorry,
Sorry.
my apologies. I will require a mover and a seconder for that.
Oh, sorry.
Motion.
Do we have a mover for that motion? Ed? Sorry, Councillor Podnowitz. Beg your pardon, and Councillor Gunson. All those in favor? And that's passed. Anyone wishing to
Thank
receive
you.
a copy of the notice of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment in respect to the minor variance application must make a written request to the clerk of the town of Minto at 5941 Highway 89, Harriston, NOG 1Z0, or by email at Annalene@townofminto. And we will officially adjourn this public meeting. So we now have a resolution moving the Committee of Adjustment into the Committee of the Whole to consider public meetings, delegations, public question period, correspondence, reports, motions for which notice has been previously given, and other business. It's moved by Councillor Zimmerman, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? And that's passed. So our first public meeting is a notice of the consideration of engineer's report for drain 119. And Clerk McRobb will outline the purpose of the meeting.
Thank you. The purpose of the meeting is to consider the engineering report prepared by R.J. Burnside and Associates Limited of Wingham, Ontario, dated February 3rd, 2025, for Drain 119. Notices of the meeting were sent to 6 landowners along with the report, as well as copies of the report circulated to town staff, Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, and the Ministry of Agricultural, Food, and Rural Affairs. I can advise that I had no speakers registered to participate in the public meeting. And that's it. Correspondence was received.
And we will now call on the engineers to provide a report for us. And we'll just ask that you state your name when you step up to the microphone for those of us who might not know you.
Okay, can everyone hear me all right? Okay. My name is Greg Nanskaville, and I'm here today on behalf of R.J. Burnside and Associates to present a couple of municipal drain reports. And with your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like to start by adding a little bit to what Annalene was saying about the purpose of this meeting.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. I trust everyone has had time to review the reports. So in interest in keeping a timeline for council, I'll keep my presentations of the reports rather brief. After I presented each report, and affected landowners and council persons have had an opportunity to ask questions, council must provide the opportunity for any landowners within the area requiring drainage to either add or remove their name from the petition. That's the same in both cases. And the Stilling Basin out the new outlet. The east branch is 57 meters of open channel work. Once again, vegetation, brushing, clearing, mulching, and hand seeding for it. Allowances have been provided under section 29, which is right of way, section 30, which is damages, and section 32, insufficient outlet. The breakdown of the project costs can be found on page 3 of appendix B. If we go to page 3, we'll see that Total estimated construction costs of $66,570. Allowances to landowners under sections 29, 30, and 32, $16,100. Preparation of the report, $40,000. Printing and consideration of the report, $2,500. Tendering, $3,500. And contract administration of $14,000. Total estimated engineering and admin, $60,000. Soils investigation, $500. Maitland Valley Conservation Authority permit fee, $500. And contingencies, net interest, and net HST of $16,330. For total estimated costs of this project of $160,000. And the assessment of these can be found in Appendix C. And on page 3, we have the main drain costs of $113,770. Page 4, for the west branch, $26,070. And the east branch, total estimated cost of $20,150. I don't know through that pretty quick, but generally that covers the assessments. Copy of the permit from Maitland Valley Conservation Authority can be found in Appendix B. And I think that's it now. I'm prepared to answer questions like.
Does town staff have any additional comments to add?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. And there were no speakers registered, correct? To speak?
We have no one registered.
Okay.
But if you can, where are we?
The council first or the public?
Council.
Okay. So are there any questions from council? Oh, sorry, Councilor Erickson?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Anderson. I'm just curious about, you show pictures on page 3 of some wet areas, ponding on lot 41, Susan John Road, Martin property, and then an existing ditch, and also on some property, and there's some broken, you picture of Welcome property, and there's a picture of Gibson property. See where I am? Yeah, so when I read this, it looked like all of the water was going to end up in the one wet area, which is the Gibsons. Like, is it, like, this is not farm, these are not farmland, any of these pictures. So I guess I was curious why, or if it's possible, or if the water is, or if some of the water is going to be added to those other wet areas and other properties, or if it is just being added to the Gibson property.
First of all, there's no added water. We haven't changed the watershed boundary. If we look at the main drain on, it would be figure 2, that's an existing sort of swale that's already there, and that comes off the agricultural land, and it heads down to another swale. And then by the time we get into the Wilton property, it's really no defined channel to speak of anymore. And definitely by the time we get to the Jim Gibson property, there's no defined bed and banks. There's, I would say there's an overland flow path, but very general. And eventually, yes, all the water will end up on the Gibson property.
So does it end up there now, or
Yes,
it's just going to end up there more quickly then, once it's drained?
the timing will change. Like I say, the watershed, which through the assistance of Jim and through Drain 101, we actually went out in the field, took some GPS shots, and we used swoop data and come up with a watershed boundary that I think Jim would agree with. Mutually agree on that. When a field is systematically tiled. And after it's been in place for a while and starts to work properly, it actually works like a sponge. And the precipitation, there will be some immediate runoff, some will get soaked in to the ground and then gradually released. The amount of water isn't really going to change, but the peak flows will be reduced and the base flows will be of longer duration.
Right, yeah, and I guess I didn't mean added water, I guess I just meant, channeling water. Because it's the same amount of water, you're absolutely right. Yeah, okay, thank you. Counselor, Zimmerman?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Anderson. I'm not a farmer by any means. I live in town where we don't have municipal drains per se. I'm just a little confused in your report when you describe insufficient outlet. So what are you talking about?
Insufficient outlet is described under the Drainage Act as not having. I'll start over again. It's the duty of the engineer to take a drainage system to what's deemed as sufficient outlet. And sufficient outlet is to a place where it will do no further harm to anyone downstream. There's a section 32 in the act that if the cost of doing such work is prohibitive, then an allowance can be provided in lieu of taking it to a sufficient outlet. So that's what we've done. It could be argued that we're not doing any damage to Jim's property. That could be an argument. I think the stronger argument is that we are artificially channeling water. We are discharging it onto Jim Gibson's property. And usually what's deemed as a sufficient outlet is usually a receiving water course or a water body. We're not doing either of those. So RJ Burnside have felt that probably the stronger argument is to provide an allowance for insufficient outlet.
So to that end, what is the permanent damage going to be to that property when you start introducing agricultural runoff from fertilizers and things like that? I mean, it has to have some detriment to the property.
I would say no, because the runoff is being farmed now currently, and any surface runoff is not going to change. If anything, once it's systematically tiled, that sponge will actually filter some of that out. So permanent damage to Jim's property, I would say, is immeasurable.
So then the next question is, so that is all tied into, in your report, the Howick Minto wetland complex. What does that do to the Howick side of things?
Exactly the same as Jim Gibson's, I would say, except it's concentrated somewhat when we put it.
Recording in progress. Sorry.
All good? Sorry,
Okay.
please, we were having some issues with the Zoom, but they seem to be fixed now, so please go ahead.
Okay, it's somewhat concentrated when we direct it towards Jim Gibson's. The last 62 meters, I believe, is we've run out of ditch, so it's just going to be surface flow. And then as it spreads over, I think Jim's called it approximately 30 acres. As it spreads over that 30 acres, any impact downstream of that would be negligible.
Well, I hope you're correct in that. I noticed in your report that you rebuked a previous engineer study that said the water was running a different direction. I'm just wondering how you came to that conclusion.
I believe the 1983 report done by Johnson was in error. I don't think that watershed was correct, and there was a couple more reports too, and there was conflicting areas in those reports. And through a wetland or bushland, particularly like a swamp, it's really difficult to tell where that barrier is, where that, the high point is, where the break in the watershed. And I believe in a lot of wetlands, once the elevation of water gets up to a certain elevation, it spreads and it can go to multiple outlets. And then as it recedes, then it finds its true one again. And that's what's happening here.
What was the original plan going to be?
The original plan,
Yeah,
it was started as a drain 102. And then after meetings and discussions with Jim, we had an adjustment in the watershed. And then the drain 119 and 121 evolved from that.
well, I think that's all I have for questions, but I find it just a little bit disturbing that you don't think you're forcing extra water into an area where it naturally filtered. Now it's coming at a greater speed, I presume it's greater quantity. That's, I guess that's it for me. A little puzzled on this.
Any other questions? Counselor Elliott?
Yeah, I'm sure you answered this, but usually when we do drainage, there's 2 or 3 different ways you can run drains. We just investigate one way of draining this property, and if there's other ways, how did you come up with this particular drainage system?
Originally, we looked at doing the drain 102. And then when we found out that watershed wasn't correct, then we had to look at other options, and we looked at one design for the John Martin property, bringing water from the north through a cut back to Jim Gibson's, I'm going to say Jim Gibson's property.
Mhm.
And we looked at that, and then we thought maybe that's not the best thing to do, bring water from one watershed into another. So then we split up those projects. And so now we have a drainage outlet for the rear of John's property and the front or the north of John's property under these 2 different reports.
Okay, thanks.
Counselor Podnowitz?
Yes, Madam Chair, I just wonder if there's some people in the audience here. I just wonder if they're going to have an opportunity to ask questions.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Any further questions from council? Are there any members of the public who have questions? Yes, sir? You have to go up to the microphone, please.
A couple things. I guess
Could you
Picture
state,
here.
could you state your name, sir,
Oh.
just loud enough for the
No,
microphone so people can hear you? Thank you.
oh, well,
Mhm.
that drain that comes out of the pond, you guys are saying that that's natural to drain. That was made by the previous owner of this land, by Roy McKay. And I don't see why we have to go through our bush or Jim's bush. Why would we dump water? Or I thought it was against the law to dump somebody else's water on us or another guy's land. But obviously it's not anymore. Couple other things. We're gonna put that ditch through my bush, so that cuts me off from the rest of my bush. How do I get over that ditch? That's one thing, and
I don't have the answers to that. We would have to get the engineer to respond to you
Yeah.
because I don't know that
can ask
information.
that, I guess. I'm against it all together, but I get beat out, I get beat out. Another thing is where they're going through there's quite a few fairly mutual or fairly big trees that in 5 or 6 years could be harvested. So they're gonna be cut down, right? So that's another problem, like they're just gonna give us the logs. So the logs are not, you can't sell them.
Okay.
The loggers don't want.
Okay, we'll get some responses to those for you.
Yeah.
We'll give the engineer a chance to speak. Thank you for your questions.
Bridge. Another thing is, why didn't they just drain John's farm into the pond that's actually there now. There's hardly any water comes into our place at this time, all the tile of, Westerholt's in John's place, the tile that are in there now are going in there. And there's been no problem. But now we wanna spend all this money on the drain. Shouldn't be. Well, I got
I'll ask if you can respond to some of those concerns. Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay, on, on Bill Wilkins' property, as I mentioned, that last 62 meters, I believe, 62 or 65, 62 meters, we're not doing anything there. That's remaining untouched. So that would be his access, just like what he has right now. So he's not being cut off from his property at all. As far as, what's that? But you're not landlocked. I've been there. You could make some adjustments if you really need to get to the top. You're not being cut off by this. As far as the value of the trees, yes, some are gonna have to go. And apparently, Bill just said they are of no value. The loggers don't want them anyway, so what are we supposed to do about that? We have provided allowances. Did I miss anything? If you wanted, culvert, we put culvert across there. Okay, we could put a culvert in.
Okay.
Yep, that would require. If you want a culvert, then the report should be referred back for us to make that adjustment. Okay. So are you saying you want a culvert or you don't want a culvert?
I want to call it, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that statement. You want a culvert if what?
If it goes through without being locked.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I feel bad, for.
You,
we
sir,
can't hear you
sir,
if you're not at the
you
microphone.
need to stand up and speak at the microphone, please.
I say, I feel sad about, or bad about John's situation that he can't drain his farm. But why should we pay or get our property ripped up and flooded? To convenient that. There's gotta be a different route. Also, like I said there before, if you run it into that pond that was there before, or made that pond bigger, just let it naturally go, that would make more sense than digging a ditch. That's, and definitely, I know what I was gonna say. You said that draining that, how many acres are going in there now, are gonna be? 200 and some, you're saying that there's not gonna be more water going there? No, I don't agree. No water. Goes into the ground and there's wet spots there now. All them wet spots, springs and that are gonna feed into that tile and they're gonna flow right into that. Like I tiled my farm there into that other drain, the one when he went in there. And positively, there's twice as much water going in that drain. Pardon?
Did you change the water, sir?
Sorry, excuse me. If you'd like to speak, you could stand up, please, and go to the mic. And identify yourself, please.
Brent Weigel Drainage. The point load of the water is gonna change Can I point at this or do I have to be right here?
Nope, sure,
We need you for the microphone or else you won't be picked up.
but he can point.
So this end of the watershed, this water naturally goes into the swamp, right? If I was to tile this farm, you put a main around here, all the way around and hook in here. So this water is moving over to here faster than if it had to make its way all the way through the swamp. So it will increase the load sooner into Jim's property. Drainage does act like a sponge, but if you're increasing the area that's going directly into this main, it's gonna get into Jim's faster. Like he said, the drainage does act as a sponge, but in this case, it's giving a point load of water into one spot faster.
And that's where that water goes down, that one.
Yeah, but at a slower pace because it has to work through the swamp first.
And that's what I was saying, that the water, well drained land is, acts like a sponge, and it cuts down on peak flows, but it increases the length duration.
Okay, on another note, have you been taking shots around the wetland complex to see where the existing outlets are? Like where does the water actually come out of that system?
Only two, and that is, the section here that goes, the section that goes into.
Thank you.
The section that goes into 102, where we modified that watershed, and then out through Jim's, which goes out into the Leonard Award. I haven't looked anywhere else.
Okay, so if the water is going into this wetland, you're assuming this wetland's relatively flat. If there's an outlet this way, then technically this watershed here should be going this way, right? But if you're tiling it, it's going to go around this way and then in directly into Jim's rather than going down this way. Correct?
Yeah. We don't have an outlet. We looked into that with drain 102.
Okay, but you're saying the water naturally goes this way now, right?
This side to the south of the yellow. Yes.
So you have shots in here showing that there's a higher ridge in here blocking this water from going this way?
No, we don't.
So how do you know?
Because that's a swamp.
Right.
And it's almost impossible to tell where the watershed break is in a swamp. And we walked over that with Jim, and that's what we mutually agreed upon.
Like to me, there's more vegetation here or more of a higher elevation vegetation here than there is here. So to me, looking at this, it looks like this watershed should be split here. And then this travels this way. So you're actually adding more water back into this watershed. Like, is there a way to show that this water for sure heads this way, or does some of this water go this way? Do you know that for sure?
No, because at different times, different water elevations, I'm sure it goes both ways.
So if
At
this-
what
okay.
point does it switch? I don't know.
Okay, so if you're adding this water, which naturally flows into this swamp.
Yep. Yep.
Right? If
Right.
you're taking this water from here and moving it around to here and directing it directly into Jim's, how do you know you're not putting more water into Jim's property?
Because the watershed boundary is the watershed boundary.
But you don't know that this is the boundary.
I'm convinced. How much money do you want to spend
Like this.
to get nowhere?
Okay, gentlemen, if I could intercede, none of us are engineers, I'm afraid. I don't have the knowledge.
But maybe they should have, maybe there should be some more investigation into whether that is the actual watershed. Like, to me, it doesn't look like it.
Okay, I can't comment on that. I am not an engineer. I don't think any of us are qualified. We have a qualified company that provides this service for us, and that's the company we work with.
Is it
Go ahead.
Mr. Weigel?
Weigel, yeah.
Can you, sorry, I was gonna ask that you make sure you sign in because I don't think that you signed in when you came in as well. So, sorry, I hate to interrupt that. There should be one that says, drain 119. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, if you'd like to step up to the microphone, please. And state your name, please.
This is ready to go, is it?
Should be.
Deputy Mayor and Council. I am Jim Gibson, owner of Lot 42, Concession 7, Minto. Number 15108, 7th line. I have owned this farm for 38 years, and I am the first in a long line of properties to receive this unwanted water flow. This process started with a plan to take water to Minto Drain 102, 7th line, Bride Road intersection at lot 41, 40 and 41, concession 6 and 7 of Minto. Drain 102 goes to the river near concession 5, about 2 miles total. Early investigation showed the existing drain to be neither deep enough or large enough. The outlet from the wetland here is 30 inches lower than one later measured well within my property at 374.75. And that measurement is not at the end of the ditch proposed, which is misleading because what is not in this report is also important to ponder, because the measurement was of that's 374 was taken in my property at a lower elevation than where they're going to dump it. The initial proposal with 3 supposed options was in the $1 million range. The water in the drain was to be contained in the wetland by passing through a sealed pipe so as not to affect the water level in the significant wetland. None of these 3 plans ever considered the insufficient outlet option now being pushed. The cheaper option they are now pursuing is to deepen the existing drainage system of field tile and ditch in John Martin's already dug and directing water into Bill Wilkins at lot 41 concession 7 illegally. The deepened ditch is then to be turned and directed toward my lot line and released into my wetland basin, which has never been surveyed regarding flow or lack of it. Other engineers consulted say if they have ever heard of this insufficient outlet option being used, it was to outlet into a ravine, river flats, or possibly an existing private ditch of sufficient capacity when everyone was in agreement. This new water, Greg says it's not. It would be a miracle of nature that Archie Wilson's water from 3/4 of a mile away could find its way through a 50-foot gravel hill into my swamp. The new water must make its way diagonally across my place, back to front, to the end of a Howick drain called the Leonard Drain, built in 1983. It will cut my 100 acres in half. This Leonard Drain is beyond the 7th line and is obviously overloaded with spring flooding in Ken Connells, who would be here, but he's in Florida, and beyond to the river, a distance of 5 miles. Again, it has not been surveyed since construction in 1983 for capacity or elevation. The tile across Connells is already to capacity and is laid on flat terrain. There is still land adjoining Connells assessed to this drain yet to be drained. And I talked to Jack Kuipers today and he can't be here. But he has definite views, same as me, on that issue. These lands already part of the Leonard Drain will not begin to dry out, even if tile drained, until water from above stops coming to it. These new lands to be drained have always been assessed to Minto Drain 102 and have never contributed to the Leonard Drain for construction or maintenance. Our wetland, soft maple swamp, I like to call it, is locally and possibly provincially significant. I've heard it called both. Now it is called the Howick Minto Wetland Complex. It is for sure locally significant. It is the largest block of continuous bush for many miles to the south and west. Because of this, it is a wildlife safety net and a winter deer yard. The deer migrate there in from smaller outlying woodlots for food and safety. This year's count is now up to 60. My compensation is set at $5,600 on a job costing $160,000. That's 3%. By dumping at my lot line compared to drain 102, the project is being saved $840,000. Much of that being township money to be spent along Bride Road. I do not need or want compensation, but surely it should be enough to replace my crossings when they wash out and dig a shallow swale to centralize the flow. And if permits are required, I don't think that should be at a cost to me. And I've mentioned that at every meeting and they never want to consider it. The shallow swale part of it. The compensation offered for this strip of land, 15 meters wide by 700 meters long, is about 2 acres. I estimate it will flood and saturate about 300 acres of my wetland basin. This basin is already wet and has substantial water coming into it from other legitimate and natural sources. The engineers say this new water will make no difference. The new acreage being tiled, ditched, and directed at me from 200 acres plus. The land being tiled once wet will outlet an inch of rain from 200 acres into what they say is 2 acres. That's a factor of 100. So that makes it 100 inches on my 2 acres. According to the wording of section 32, the insufficient outlet section, appendix A, page 2, if the cost of continuing the drainage works to an outlet with sufficient capacity will exceed the amount of injury to be caused below the termination of the drainage works, a sufficient sum to compensate owners should be paid. That's 5 miles of injury. How much, how long to properly assess and repair this damage when caused? This should surely have been looked at instead of suggesting this water, manure, and soluble contaminants just disappear in my portion of the wetland, 2 acres. The compensation offered me at one meeting was more than $18,000. Then it was $62.20. Now it's $56.90. When asked where these numbers come from, the question was met with blank stares. In the report on page 2 and 3, appendix A, the allowance for the open drain, should it continue, is reduced to 33%. Why? That is for the working corridor. The allowance is for the working corridor, not the actual drain corridor, which is paid at 100%. I have no confidence in their calculations or where they dream them up. I have experience in flooded wetlands. I have another farm on Spencetown Road, Howick, 1 road south. This farm my father bought 75 years ago. Over the years, small ditches have been dug, outletting surface water along the field edges to upstream wetlands. As equipment became developed and more available, the ditches were enlarged and lengthened. My woodland was at the receiving end of this water being held back by Spencetown Road. The swamp was being killed. I asked for a drain extension to the Gibson Burlet municipal drain. It took 8 years for completion and final payment to the township. Dietrich Engineering and Greg Nanscoville were the engineers, and other than the time it took, I'm satisfied with the outcome. I have experience with trees' intolerance to changing water levels. My solution, John Martin's bush is the lowest part of his farm. Lower than Lavalette farms on either side of him, and substantially lower than Archie Wilson. My measurements suggest most of these acres could be drained into John Martin's bush of 8 acres, compared to the 2 suggested to receive it in mine. Rebuild the hill with a non-porous berm and provide for a gradual water outflow. The water could then make its way to wherever it wanted, maybe my place, because that's where they claim it's going anyway. The land bordering Mr. Martin's wetland would drain after the storm event or spring melt had passed. Every one of us bordering this significant wetland must already concede to crop losses guaranteed by foraging numbers of deer, wild turkeys, and hordes of raccoons along the field edges. There are going to be no bumper crops here. Get used to it. If the compensation does not go way up and redesign is not undertaken to guarantee our protection from high flows of water and contaminants downstream into the distant future, I must ask that this drain be extended through my place with the associated damages and costs to me. Because I cannot stand by and watch the drowning. S. Vanderveen is the project engineer who signed this document. I have never met him and wonder if he has ever actually seen the project. I am content with what I have and consider myself lucky to have it. And I don't think I should have to fight like this about something that should have never been considered in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any answers to provide or any other comments to give back?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I don't think I want to read everything that Jim just read, but I do have comments.
Right.
And the proposed drainage system will have no effect on the current use of this property. The area in question will still be able to house deer in the wintertime, as well as provide local people the ability to ski, snowmobile. That'd be a bonus. Jim's assessment to the Leonard Drain 1983 is irrelevant. We can't do anything about that now under our appointment. RJ Burnside and Associates cannot comment on that shallow ditch being punched through the gravel ridge around 83. We have no knowledge of that. Throughout this document, Jim makes reference to new added water. It should be noted that there is no new water being introduced into the wetland as a result of the proposed works. Residents assessed to the Leonard Drain or local council could request an updated assessment schedule under section 76 of the Drainage Act. In my opinion, Jim is incorrect in his above statement. That's why we elected to use section 32 of the Drainage Act. He says the flow, because the flow in my place is not municipal, there's no mechanism for damages, erosion, loss of control, financial loss, or death of my trees. And that's why we use section 32 to provide allowances for that, even though it won't be a part of the municipal drain. It should be noted that that the area Jim is referring to currently is designated significant wetland. I think we all agree on that, and perhaps provincially significant. And as such, the area is an area of inundated water for significant periods of time throughout the given year. We've discussed the idea of extending the municipal drain across his property, and Jim was the one who was unreceptive to this idea. Unless we provided him the money and he could do it himself. I said that won't work. And we don't see any change right now. We're not planning on doing any work across Jim's property. So his access to the back isn't gonna change at all. So, John Martin is a responsible farmer, has the responsibility to farm responsibly with regards to provincial nutrient management regulations, just like any other farmer. And he has been doing that in the past. I have to assume he will continue to do such. During our discussion with Jim about extending the drainage system across his property, we did tell him that the Conservation Authority may want a closed system in the wet area. It should also be noted that the proposed works ditch ends prior to the wetland boundary as shown in the plan in the report. And I think the Conservation Authority would appreciate the fact that we're not going into the wetland. And I don't think they would be happy with us extending an open ditch through the wetland when we don't have to, in our opinion. We could get that from them. And obviously they're okay with what we're doing because we have their permit included in the report.
Right.
It should be understood the common law is in effect until it's replaced by statute law. The Drainage Act is a revised statute of Ontario, and as such, it overrides common law. So Jim had a bunch of comments about common law you can and can't do. They're irrelevant when we're working under statute law. And Jim has suggested that the compensation provided to him should be equivalent to the cost of completing the drainage works across his property, including 2 culverts at today's industry standards. 3 Burnside staff have evaluated the compensation being provided to Mr. Gibson's property for insufficient outlet, as stated in the drainage report, and we believe the method of calculation and the resulting monetary amount to be reasonable. Those are my responses to
Thank you.
Jim.
Other,
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Do you have more to say?
I would like to add
Okay.
to,
I'm sorry, but this isn't a forum for us to
Okay.
have these discussions. You've had previous
so he's
meetings.
allowed to say what he wants and
Sir, you,
gets to-
you were given the floor for a lengthy period of time.
Yeah.
I believe you've had discussions previously, as noted, that the engineering company and you have talked about mutual agreement. I understand that there doesn't seem to be mutual agreement now. I will ask if there are any other questions from council at this time. If you'd like to approach the podium, please, and state your name.
Hi, I'm Mary Sanderson. Okay, I just want to ask, the Leonard Drain, I live down the road and part of my farm goes into the Leonard Drain. So, okay, this is gonna sound unscientific, but the water will swoosh down and it'll go into Jim's bush and then it will end up at the Leonard Drain. And I'd like to know if the Leonard Drain was assessed in your plan for its ability to be able to take that water when it comes down. Like you're saying, there's no more extra water, but there is water that's gonna swoosh down. So is that Leonard Drain, does it have in your report, did you investigate and assess that Leonard Drain so that our farms won't be adversely affected by the spring melt and the water that swooshes down? Like, will our fields be later in draining? Like, did you look at the Leonard Drain? That's my thing. Was it assessed or was it just, oh, well, that'll go to the Leonard Drain?
The Leonard Drain was undersized pretty much from its conception, especially when it goes into Ken Connell and into a pipe system. And I believe Johnson used a 1/4 of an inch drainage coefficient, which even at that time was grossly undersized for filling in an open ditch that used to exist. And we've had meetings with Jim and Ken Connell as to, Kenny Connell obviously has some concerns. He says, I get flooded out now, it's going to be worse. It's like, we can upsize it. We can go as far as we have to. And, Ken's response was, who pays for that? And you know, the community pays for it. Oh, no, that's not gonna happen. So that's just what we got.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from council? Oh, sorry, beg your pardon.
Brad Gibson. So I had sent some correspondence in, there's an obvious difference of opinion on water flows. I'm not gonna waste time on that, but ultimately, I guess, if and when you decide to proceed with this, if we get, maybe get a report that has some engineering values in it. So we're talking about 15 meters, why 15 meters? How do we come up, like, what elevations are we taking? And a flow, expected peak, flow and duration. So that when there is damages in the future, that we can deal with that.
Thank you. Is there any Sure. Step up to the mic, please.
This morning I took a drive with my snowmobile back.
Sorry, we need
Oh.
to, you need to state your name again into the
Bill
microphone,
Wilson.
please, sir.
Bill Wilkin. I took a drive around the bush and to see what was going on back there because I could hear chainsaws back. So as far as I'm concerned, there was no okay to start this situation by logging or clearing the bush where the drain's gonna go through John's Park. Now, who gave them
Is-
all right, the okay to do that?
Do you know? I don't know. Do you
No.
know who was?
John will have to answer
Yeah.
that again.
You'd like to speak, sir? Yes, if you could approach the mic, please, and identify yourself.
I'm Michael Park. Actually, Mary and I are married.
Oh, okay.
And the water's heading in our direction. Apparently, what I understand, it will be the same amount of water. If I understand this correctly, but the rate of flow will change.
Could you just speak into the mic
I'm
so
sorry,
people can
pardon
hear
me.
you?
So, I had two questions. I also am concerned about the Leonard drain, given that our farm does outlet into that drain. And I think we could be adversely affected by it. I'm also wondering why we weren't informed of these meetings. We just heard about them the other day. And
About
and,
which meetings?
the meetings about this drain, the reports and drain 119. We had no idea it was happening, although it will change the rate of flow of water through our award drain on our property. And it will adversely affect the drainage on our farm. I think we should have been informed from the very beginning. I understand. I see there's been other meetings and people have made comments and been informed. And it's the first we've heard of it. So I'm just wondering why we weren't involved in the process, given that our farm is directly affected.
I can't answer that myself. I don't know who sets the list of people to be notified. I'm not sure how that process works. Okay.
Okay, perhaps you can answer why we weren't part of the
Yes, I
process.
said we weren't planning on doing any work down in that area. And once again, back to the insufficient outlet. By the time, the only thing that's changing on the John Martin property up there is subsurface tiling. The water still comes down through here, goes to gyms, the same spot. By the time it floods the area down through gyms, maybe even some other people's, the outflow into the Leonard drain would be negligent. And as we've heard before, it floods now, it's a problem. And in my opinion, it was undersized right from day one. And if they want it improved, there's a method and mechanism where we can improve.
We didn't know there was a threat to it. And I think we should.
Could you
does-
speak into the
Oh, pardon me.
microphone, sir?
I was about to say, we didn't know there was a threat to the drainage on our farm. And the increased flow at whatever times they are, definitely is going to affect us. We also have an award drain through which some of this water will flow. So I think it was a mistake not to include us.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir?
My name is John Martin, and it sounds like I'm the instigator of these various oppositions. When I thought of tiling, I had thought of tiling maybe 25 years ago, but it had to go back to the next concession through these wetlands. I thought cost was prohibitive. I decided a few years ago I'd like to go ahead. I talked with the township. They suggested an engineer. I thought that's the professional way. So we got an engineer. And I was told that it's possible to tile. Farmers should be able to tile their fields. So we went ahead with this. I thought I got professionals on the case. They understand what they're doing. So I want to be here and apologize to those, my neighbors, that are offended. But I'm in a spot now where I'll have to pay $100,000 for where I'm at now. Do the neighbors suggest that I walk away? I heard Bill Wilson say he's tiled his fields. He had an outlet. He has that opportunity to tile. I'm stuck. My apologies. I guess I don't know where to go. If I should bow out or if I should let the engineers go ahead and complete this.
Are there any more questions or comments? I think we understand where you're coming from, unless you have. Okay, I don't think we're here to hash over the process. There is a process. It's been followed. There have been multiple meetings, is my understanding. And this is the usual. So the report now goes. I think my next step is to go, the council decides whether or not to proceed with the project by provisionally accepting the report or referring the report back to the engineer for modifications. There is no right to appeal assessments or other aspects of the engineer's report at this meeting. These appeal rights will be made available later in the procedure. So I guess I'm looking at council to see if we have a mover or seconder to either accept the report or ask for it to be taken back.
Can I just?
Absolutely.
A comment or a question, I guess.
Sure.
So Greg, at the start, you'd said that if we don't approve it, that we need to supply you some information to work on to come back, right? I don't think any of us around here are engineers to maybe supply that information, but if we didn't approve it this meeting today, would there be enough information or enough changes that you could come back with a different report, or would you just come back with the same one? Do you know what I'm trying to ask? Like,
I don't think so.
like without me giving, like, I don't think I can give you a recommendation to say, hey, this is what I'd like to see changed in this report. But with all the comments and everything, is there anything you would change in this report to come back to council that would satisfy maybe the landowners or anybody else, or would it just be the exact same report come back?
I would have to talk to some other people at RJ Burnside, but I'm not comfortable spending a great deal more money just because Jim Gibson and friends want to see us spend more money. We've got the Conservation Authority's permit. We're using a section of the act that we believe is appropriate. I don't see any need to spend more money just because Jim and friends want us to.
Yep. No, I was just asking if there's anything that stood out tonight or today that would maybe change anything, right?
No.
Good.
What?
Excuse me, sir. You can speak if you ask to speak and come up, but right now somebody else has the floor.
Maybe this would be a good time to point out that if council adopts this report tonight as is, there is an appeal body, the Ontario Drainage Tribunal, and then it would be some impartial people who made the decisions as to either the insufficient outlet was done adequately, or the dollar value should be adjusted, or no, you should push a drain via tile or open ditch right through the provincially significant wetland.
I really doubt if the last scenario would work. I don't see, the tribunal pushing that. But the other two, if it's about money compensation, we didn't do it right. We get their unbiased opinion, and their opinion overrides us.
And I think that's good information for everybody to know as well, that there's a tribunal process as well. Right? Okay, thank you.
Counselor Zimmerman?
So first of all, Greg, I think your comment about Jim and Mr. Wilkins wanting you and us to spend more money was a bit out of line. For me, the telling tale was from Lago Drainage that suggested that the natural water flow isn't going the way you said it is. And I think that if we had further investigation into that, might be a good starting point at settling the discrepancy between what you and your team say and what their thoughts are. So that would be one thing that we could send as a direction.
Three, so there, I mean, there's, it seems to be, there's a couple conflicting things through council on what they wish to do. I would maybe suggest that you make a motion that it be accepted and then see where that turns out, and then you can always change the motion if that was not. And again, as Mr.
There's an
Naskeville
appeal
said, there
process.
is a process through the tribunal in order to, if they do not accept what it is, any of the members of the public or the landowners, then they can go through the tribunal. Also, if it has to do with any of the financial parts, that is talked about during the court of revision, which would happen later on in the process. At this point in time, the process is just if you would accept the report. I could make them read out a motion for council to consider. That's up to you, Chair Anderson, just to see where we're at with that.
If I could just comment, and this is off of the cuff, but drainage acts, drainage decisions are interesting. You learn about it, something you don't know about anything about until you sit on council or if you have farmland. And we understand that they become emotionally charged because it's your land. And if you're at the bottom of the hill, you're in a far different position than being at the top of the hill, and you have no choice about it. It just happens. And if somebody needs their land dried, the costs get apportioned appropriately. And I've now in my years on council seen several of these, and other members will have seen several. It is not an easy decision, but there is a process, and we trust our engineers to do what needs to be done. Inevitably, there is somebody generally less than pleased with how we got to the result, but the water has to move. It can't sit on people's land. So there has to be a safe way and the most reasonable way to move it. So I think having a motion to accept this report and you pursuing the appeal process, if that's, and you have a totally unbiased body who can look at this and perhaps come up with an answer that we don't have for you right now, unfortunately. So if I could have a mover.
If I could read a
Oh,
motion.
certainly,
For
absolutely.
consideration. Sorry, that the council of the town of Minto provisionally adopt the engineer's report by bylaw in open session. Yep. Oh, sorry,
Oh,
yes.
sorry, beg your pardon.
John wanted
Yes.
to come.
You have an opportunity to withdraw your name from the petition if you wish, or just be gone.
Then his name.
Oh, that's a good question. So if I take my name off the list, if this cost would escalate from going on from here majorly, would I have a decision? Could I make that decision later? Or do I have to make a decision today as far as declining this drain?
I think it's unusual, but I think if you were to go tribunal, other folks, yeah, and you were to decide, however, I'm sure they would have.
Thank you.
So at this point in time, are we going to stay as it is? Nobody's withdrawing? Yes.
The motion that the council of the town of Minto provisionally adopt the engineer's report by bylaw in open session is the motion in front of council.
You're moving. Counselor Elliott moves. Seconder? What happens when we have no seconder?
If we have no seconder, it's lost.
Okay. Do we
Can
have
I-
questions?
yeah, I have a
before-
question.
Okay.
The seconder just brings it up for council. to discuss.
Absolutely.
So I'll second it to get on the floor, but I also want to ask a question.
Okay, thank you.
So, so at the, quarter revision,
Mm-hmm.
where dollars can be distributed differently,
Yes.
it's the same number of dollars though that we're working with. Is that not true?
Yes, that's true. And actually, one thing that should be noted is, allowances are not assessments.
Right.
So,
So that would be changed.
the quarter revision can't change the allowances, just the
Okay.
distribution of the other costs.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And then the other question is,
Yes.
so if we approve it, I understand what happens. If this motion is defeated, then what happens?
I would,
Oh, okay. Perhaps you could enlighten us on that. I do not have that answer.
Yep.
Excellent.
If you refer it back,
Mm-hmm.
along with some instructions, then we carry on. If you defer it to another time, which most places don't do that, I have had that done. And if you're just to decide to just shelve it, which you might get some legal implications doing that.
Yeah.
And there could be appeals
Right.
of your decision.
Okay. Yes. Counselor Elliott,
The
sorry.
reason I made the motion the way it was, I think it's an opportunity to go to a tribunal and have a court hearing. with People that have better knowledge than what we have.
Yes.
What we do is give them the opportunity by moving it on. If we don't, that's the opportunity.
Typically, everyone. If it's a frivolous or vexatious appeal, sometimes the court will award costs. But usually the increased costs stay within the watershed. Price just goes up.
Right.
So I have a feeling that if we turned it down, you're gonna make some changes that come back and we're gonna be through this whole schmozzle again, I would think, and not a schmozzle, the same appeals that we've gone through yet. This would give an opportunity for these guys to make their appeal and make the decision. I just think it's a better way.
Counselor Dirksen?
So going through the appeal process, we had one actually not too long ago. I don't know whether
that was a quarter revision of the law. I'm not sure if that's a bit different.
So is it AFRAT? Is it the Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs Appeals Tribunal that goes through, or is it through a drainage tribunal?
It's the court of revision.
No, if this was to go to,
This would be it used to be called the Ontario Drainage Tribunal. I think it's got a slightly different name now.
okay, I guess I'm just thinking, just one moment, it's a fairly intense process to go through that appeal process as I understand it. And it's certainly there's some cost to it. So I guess it's just a question of where the cost should be spent. Do we send it back to you so that that's where the cost is, or do we send it to the tribunal so that's where the cost is? But no matter which it is, people aren't happy and it's going to cost people more money. The only way it's not going to cost people more money is if we accept the drainage report and say, let the chips fall where they may, but we got a lot of neighbors that are not happy with each other. So I don't know, we're in a spot here.
Yes. Oh, just one moment. There was a gentleman at the back that had his hand up first. If you'd like to go to the podium, sir, and speak into the microphone.
Brent Weigel, can I suggest some things that he should go back on?
No.
Suggest some things for you guys to suggest?
We'll look to see if Over need to answer that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Harrison. At this point, I think we've discussed this pretty thoroughly, and we know that we're not likely to come to any conclusion, which,
Like there's a few little things they're asking for that would probably appease them enough to let it go through. Like, I have three things, like Jim's asking for culverts and a swale, just to make sure that because the water is coming more gradually, it's going to be wet longer in certain areas. So to make sure he has access through to the back of his property, that shouldn't be unheard of. As well as his neighbor, he should be able to get access to the back of his property, because the drainage may make that area wet 12 months of the year, whereas before it might have been wet 8 to 10. So 2 to 4 months they would have access to that property. So a swale with a culvert, like that's not, the cost for that isn't ridiculous. It should be something to look at, as well as the actual amount of water that, like, in my mind, that water looks like it splits two ways. Greg's saying it's going one, but he has no data to back that up. So another thing would be to just go get a bit of data. Like, there's no leaves on the trees. Send someone in with snowshoes, get some shots. It's not hard to do. If he wants to hire me to do it, I can get some shots. Like, I'm looking for an outcome too. Like, John wants to tile. That's a reasonable request. But it can't be at the expense of damages to someone else's property. $5,000 isn't even a load of logs anymore. So in 5 years, if his logs were to come to size, they should be accounted for that way, not today. Because those trees aren't going to die in the next 5 years unless there is too much water. So there's simple things you can look at.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that information, sir. Yes, ma'am? I'll finish on this one.
Okay, what I'm thinking is for the gentleman that wants the farm drained, if the Leonard drain, you're saying you're bringing water to a drain that's insufficient to handle it, wouldn't it make more sense to, if the Leonard drain now is going to have to be expanded, then he'll have to pay that too. If I was going to start to drain my farm, I want to know the full cost of, if he has to pay all the way down the line, right? Like, is that a misunderstanding?
Excuse me, that's
Oh, that's
goes,
not a
carries
question
on.
then?
It's, yeah,
Oh.
no, we're
No,
gonna,
I'm not
we're gonna
gonna
leave it
argue,
at
but
that.
yeah.
Okay, thank
I
you.
just wasn't clear on it.
I think we've had sufficient discussion to understand that we're not going to come to an agreement here this evening. So the choice for council, as I see it, correct me if I'm wrong, is we either make a motion to accept the report as it is, or to ask to go back to have it looked at again, or they can go to a tribunal. We're not looking to add extra costs. I don't know what the tribunal costs. So I guess it's up to us. We either accept it as it is now, or we ask for it to go back for revisions that take how long, or even looking at it if there are revisions possible.
Timeline would be a couple months.
We have a motion on the floor.
I was just gonna say, we have a
I know.
motion on the
Yes, we
floor at
do.
this point.
And again, to clarify why I'm making this motion, I still believe it's the cheapest way, because eventually, if you bring it back and again, we're not satisfied, or we as a group aren't satisfied with that group, it's gonna go to a tribunal. So we're gonna pay you to go back, make some changes. If the tribunal then would make that decision, you're only dealing with one group, if that's what they wish to do.
So
So
we-
that's the reason I made the motion the way it was.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. We have a seconder, so I'll put it to the vote. Those of us or those of you in favor of it? Show of hands, please. Okay, those against? Okay, so that didn't pass.
Defeated?
Defeated. Counselor Dirksen?
So I'll make a motion that we send it back to Burnside and that some of the suggestions that are made by the drainage contractor be looked at.
So
Can I
if
do
I could
that?
just maybe.
May I do that?
That the council of the town of Minto refer the report back to the engineer for review of adding culverts and a swale through Jim Gibson's property and access for Bill Watkins' property. Is that
A
kind of?
much better motion. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Could we add other adjustments as deemed appropriate? Just so it's not contained to,
Sure.
Yeah. And other adjustments as deemed appropriate.
Yep, friendly amendment. Happy. Yep.
and do I have a seconder for that motion?
Okay.
Mr. Podnowitz? And all of those in favor? And that's passed. Thank you very much for a very fulsome discussion. I know it's not what everybody's outcome, but it is something to look for. We'll work on coming to a happier resolution for everybody.
Can you officially adjourn the meeting?
Oh, and I will officially adjourn the meeting. If you want to stay for the rest of council, that would be great. But if you'd like to leave, you're also free to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Oh, certainly. Excuse me?
We have one more drain too.
Oh, sure. Sorry, excuse me. Oh, yes, the other report. Yes, you don't get to go.
Yeah.
We'll just give them a few minutes. to-
Yep. We'll just give it a couple minutes till it clears out of it.
Could I ask that anyone that was here
If-
for Drain 119, please make sure you signed in at the back with your name and address, et cetera. Thank you.
Can we ask you to move to the hall unless you're wishing to stay for the rest, because we still have a lot of council business to do? I don't want to keep everybody here all night long if we don't have to. Thank you. Okay. Moving right along. We'll go on to the consideration of the engineer's report for drain 121. Clerk McRobb is going to outline the purpose of the meeting for us.
Thank you very much. The purpose of the meeting is to consider the engineering report prepared by R.J. Burnside and Associates Limited of Wingham, Ontario, dated February 3rd, 2025 for drain number 121. Notice of the meeting was sent to 5 landowners along with the report. As well, copies of the report were circulated to town staff, Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, and the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Affairs. I can advise that no one registered to speak at the meeting.
Thank you very much. And we'll ask Greg to give us a report. Thank you so much.
Okay. Madam Chair, members of council and staff, I'll try to be a little quicker with this one. This project was also initiated by a petition signed by John and Miriam Martin. Petition was found to be valid in accordance with section 41A of the Drainage Act, having a majority of numbers of landowners from within the area requiring drainage. A public information meeting was held on January 30th, 2024, right here in the council chambers. The watershed for this project is approximately 38.6 hectares or 95 acres of agricultural lands and half a hectare or 1.2 acres of an open road allowance. The proposed works include 107 meters of channel works, removal of 1 private culvert, construction of 1 stilling basin at the new outlet, installation of approximately 590 meters of concrete tile and HDPE pipe, high density polyethylene pipes, ranging in diameters from 250 millimeters, which is 10 inch, to 450 millimeter, which is 18 inch. Also the installation of 2 concrete catch basins. Allowances have been provided under section 29 and 30 of this act, or of this report. The breakdown of the project cost can be found on page 4 of appendix B. Which is total estimated construction costs of $70,100. Allowances to owners under sections 29 and 30 of $24,400. Preparation of report $35,000. Printing consideration of report $2,500. Tendering $2,500. Contract administration $14,500. total estimated engineering and admin costs of $54,500. Other costs include legal fees, tile locates, $8,000, administration and financing, MVCA fee review, net HST, construction and engineering interest charges, $13,000 for a total estimated cost of this project of $170,000. And the breakdown. Assessments can be found on page 3 of Appendix C. This is just, you can see the benefit assessment of $42,510 and outlet assessment of $127,490 for total estimated construction costs, as said before, $170,000. A letter of advice from Department of Fisheries and Oceans, as well as the permit from Mainland Valley Conservation Authority, can be found in Appendix D. And I'm ready to take questions.
Are there, sorry? Yep. Are there any questions from, or, sorry, comments from town staff? Beg your pardon.
Not at this time.
Okay. Are there any other speakers registered to participate or wanting to comment? Yes, sir? Oh, sorry, you have to go to the podium and you have to state your name, please, sir.
My name is Bert Westerholt. I'm looking after the Lavolit property. I just wanted to mention to him that this piece here with the barn is, or the house was, is sold and John B. Mark bought that, or his son. Yeah, that's severed off, so that for the assessment that goes to him. Some of it, you know, not that's all. Like, that's not much, it's just an acre.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak?
My name's Brad Hall. I'm the property on the Howick portion across the road allowance there. And watching what went on with the last part of the project, I pretty much know what's going to happen here, but I'd just like to say that all of the water that's going to end up coming my way, again, is going to follow those ditches and go through the award drain as well, which will flood it even more. So every single part of that property, of those properties, will flood out everything down there if the other section of the drain is going in that same direction. So I'm here to ask council to hold off on making their decision to retrieve more information on property title searches and drain systems, as I've only received this engineer's report a week ago in the mail. And I've noticed there's a change been made to the designation of the drain on my side from the original drawings that I received. The drain being designated as the Milton Leonard Award Drain has now changed to a private drain. And if it's an award drain, then anyone who is attached to that award drain, anyone below that actually has to make approvals to any works being done above upstream. And I'd also like to know if the Lavalette property, after receiving this, I was informed that there was already tiling and draining into my said private ditch, if that's what it's been changed to. So this could be a bigger issue So that's why I suggest you hold off on that. Because water from tile drainage system is considered to be surface water, so it has no right of drainage. After receiving all information from the engineer's report, it's been brought to my attention that a tile has been, sorry, I found outletting a tile outletting on my property into my private ditch. The law states a rural owner finds a tile draining out under their land or into a private ditch from higher neighboring ground. This would not be permitted. Since the tile water would be considered simply surface water, the only exception to this is if the tile outlet into the private ditch has existed for more than 20 years, and if that during that time never disputed or opposed in the tile outlet. And all right, too many papers. So I'm asking if there is written approval from the previous owner on that tile being pushed into my drainage system. And with that being said, you would just, there's some options, put the project on hold to allow for more investigation on it, or refer the report back to the engineer to make slight changes as to not include my property. Shut down the whole project, which we know that's not gonna happen. We know it's not gonna happen. Or we can have a sit down again and come to an agreement with all involved on a few conditions, mutually agreed upon and signed by everyone involved to allow the project to continue. I've never said I'm against drainage, as I know there's a benefit to agriculture to an extent. The way it's come upon my family and surrounding neighbors, regardless of what the law states on how this can be achieved, has felt more like a bullying tactic. No matter how this gets voted on, none of you can seriously think that this is right, that a neighbor can basically come petition for your property that has been a battle to obtain and a sacrifice to achieve and maintain.
Thank you. Yes, sir? If you have, yes, please.
When we tiled that property, we asked the previous owner that we can tile into that ditch. And that was, I think that's 15 years ago, maybe, or I don't know, when did you buy the farm? Yeah. Yeah, so that was at least 10, I can check exactly when it was because we tiled the farm and I have bills of that.
So it was already existing.
That was existing and I put that, we asked the previous owner if he can tile in there and he said, yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Well, what else can you do? You ask them, then the Marquette asked, Steve asked them and they said, it's fine, so then we tiled.
Thank you. Greg, did you have any comments on that? Wait for Greg.
The reason the name got changed from the Leonard drain on the drawings is because when we started looking at old reports, it was vague as to really what was included in the reports. And on a newer drain report, not on the Leonard drain, it was labeled as such. So we thought if we're not satisfied that it is, then we just took it off and referred it as private ditch. That's how that came from. I'm sorry, what other question? Oh, yes, there was the, we're not allowed to tile drain and outlet onto his private property. Okay, that's going back to common law again.
Okay. And
this is statute law. And what he was talking about, the 20 years, that's called a prescriptive right to drainage.
Okay.
And someone can think they have it, and the benchmark is 20 years undisputed.
Okay.
And not changed.
All right.
And a lawyer can tell you have prescriptive rights, or I can tell you have prescriptive rights, but you don't know until you get a judgment from a judge. That's
Okay.
with prescriptive rights.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir, you'd like to comment? Please approach the podium and
Hi,
state your
it's
name.
Michael Park, and Mary and I have the Milton Leonard, award drain, apparently it's a private drain. Okay, so the water is gonna flow definitely through our drain. And again, this is all news to us. We have not been involved in, we have no engineers' reports. It came to our attention a couple of days ago. So I would ask the council to defer this matter until we have a chance to be involved and receive the same reports as Brad and other people. I really, I support your tiling of your farm. I think that's right, and it should happen. But I think the process, oh, I'm sorry. I support Mr. Martin in having his farm tiled. But I think we need to look at the process here, and obviously we've fallen through the cracks somehow. And for us to, I believe we have the same right to the reports that everyone else has. And we should have been involved in the meetings up till now, especially on this portion of the drainage, because it does go directly through the drain on our land.
I cannot speak to that because we don't choose who the report goes to.
That's right. And I think it's just an error. And to adapt, to give us a chance to adapt, and I believe that the decision should be deferred until we can be made part of the process.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Any questions from council? No? Yes, Councillor Podwitz?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I like the idea of them getting together and having a discussion. So I would suggest maybe deferral and then have them come back and, come up with some kind of solutions if they can.
So did you want to make a motion to that effect?
Make motion to defer.
Annaline will
let me just
quickly
give me
craft
a minute.
something for us.
Can I ask Greg a question while we're
Sure,
doing this?
Please.
So
Yes, please.
when they talk about the people coming to the meetings, is that only the people directly involved in that? The watershed and where it's getting drained into? It's not necessarily everybody downstream that on another drain, correct? It's just.
That's correct. We don't go right.
And is that maybe why? Yeah. Okay.
So if
It's Michael Park again. This is an 18-inch pipe coming directly towards our property, which floods already every spring, and the increased water will have, it's not like we're a mile away or 10 miles away downstream. It will have a direct effect on the water levels in our bush.
So if I could ask a question, if it was to be deferred, would there be a way to involve them? It's outside of who you would usually invite to the discussions, but would there be a way to have them involved, or how does that work? It's a day for tricky questions.
Defer it, but actually, like, we've submitted a report here.
Okay.
And we can't just defer and then come up with another one.
Okay.
Unless you refer it back.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I just didn't understand how that process worked.
Sorry, so I know that Mr. Hall had asked some specific things, and he also said something about taking your name off. Is that correct or no? Yeah, no. Because there is the opportunity, right, for someone to take their. Yeah.
No.
Does he have the right? Is that part of the referral? I just want to make this motion correct, so I'm just checking.
You maybe don't have the petition right in front of you, but his
No.
name, I believe, is not on it.
Is not on it. So
Your name is not on the petition at all. Okay, sorry. Thank you very much. I was just looking for clarification on that. You don't want to add your name? That's what I'm checking. So the Council of the Town of Minto will refer the report back to the engineer for a review with more property searches. That was one thing I heard. I'm not sure if there was anything else that council was.
Councillor Podnowitz?
I think I'd like to withdraw my motion. I think based on Greg's comments that we have to make recommendations on what he has to change.
Yes.
And I don't think we're qualified to make those recommendations.
No. Okay, so that's withdrawn?
Yes.
Okay. So then are there any other members of the public who wish to add or remove their name from the petition? Sure.
Archie Wilson, and I'm at the top of the hill for all this stuff. It all leaves our property. It's kind of a funny situation though. We're at the top of the hill. And with all these different drains, our property of approximately 50 acres would drain to 4 different drains. So it's going all different ways. And so we get this. And the one thing I just want to make a comment on, and I don't know the best way to move forward, but for us, I could say, okay, I would like to have I don't have a place to dump our water. All those 4 drains, I'm gonna have to go and find, you would agree with me, Ryan? There's no place to take our water, even up top of the hill. And I'm not asking that we put it through, because the problem with that is we're gonna have a bunch of costs for everyone. Right now, we're gonna pay, it's not big money compared to lots of these people. We're gonna pay 10,000 between the 2 drains and still no ability to do anything with those drains ourselves. Because we're paying because our neighbors have them. And I'm cool with that because that's part of this whole process. We gotta do it. But I guess I want to make the point, I've reached out to my neighbor, and maybe for me, it makes more sense for me to do that than to put it back to the council if I can, and work with Mr. Martin, and I respect Mr. Hall's position here too. Whether these things go ahead or not, people are gonna have their choice as to how it goes ahead. But if it goes ahead, one thing I'm concerned about with all these, the more we send it back, the more we cycle around, we're adding costs.
Right.
I'm paying for costs I'm getting, I'm responsible for it because I'm at the top of the hill, but I'm getting zero benefit from because I don't even have access to it.
Right.
So when we think about this, how do we make this expedient? And I would, looking at if we decide to drain our property, I would rather probably talk to John. There's a way to move my water into his collection system as opposed to make new systems or big additions, because I'm sure it will be done much more cost effective. I can work with my neighbor, even though I could get funded.
Thank you for that comment. So now we're
Well,
back
I can make
to-
the motion that we had with an original, just for your consideration, would be that the council of the town of Minto provisionally adopt the engineer's report by bylaw in open session. So that would have to be moved and seconded to be on the floor.
And do I have a mover for that motion?
Sorry, say again.
Further questions?
So that the council of the town of Minto provisionally adopt the engineer's report by bylaw in open session. So again, the same one that we brought forward the last time that was defeated with the last rain. I didn't know if anyone wanted to get it on the floor for discussion at all.
I'll make that motion. That'll help.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder for that motion? No second, so it's dead on the floor. Okay. I'm so glad I got this meeting.
Sure knew when to go away, didn't he?
It didn't he? Just. So where does that leave us now?
So there was the consideration started for it to be referred back, but that got pulled. I don't know if that's something that council still wants to do, or if Greg would be able to provide us information if there is no consideration or no motions made on this at all.
You're gonna have to make.
Ryan?
Oh, Ryan wants to speak. Excellent.
No problem. So right now you have 2 options. We still have a valid petition. So
Right.
you either bring it back to the engineer for adjustments and give him some advice on what you would like to see or how you'd like to see it, or you approve it. And if there's further discrepancies, they can go through the tribunal. There's no option really to just defer it
Right.
or.
I understand that. I think we're leery about making them do the tribunal and add more cost to it, but there really isn't a lot of options.
Yeah, so referring it back to the engineer without any kind of advice or description is likely just to end up with him coming back with a very similar
Similar.
or the exact report and do this all again. So
Okay.
we need,
All right. If you come up to the stand, please. Yep. Yep.
Sorry, what motion was?
The-
Like, deny, whatever, what?
It just hasn't received a seconder.
Oh.
And that was to refer the report back. Oh, sorry, no, that was to
That was-
provisionally adopt the engineer's report by bylaw in open session. At that point in time, what happens then is it could be able to come back for court of revision, or it could go back to, or it could go to tribunal. That's my understanding.
On the petitioner's side, not, right? Am I understanding that? I'm sorry, what?
so right now we're assessing whether to adopt this report as is or refer it back to the engineer.
I thought that's what just got,
Well, they,
Yeah,
so,
I
so
think that-
now if it gets adopted, like no, so my understanding and the way that that was just worded is that was just squashed. Nobody, am I correct?
it's
in
one of the
understanding
two
that?
options. One of them hasn't been made yet. Nothing has been made. One of the two options need to be made. And
Right.
if we're referring it back to the engineer, we should have some justification for them to,
Precisely.
some advice to what we want changed right now.
yes.
Our only advice is opposition from receivers, where if you guys don't have the experience or knowledge on how to proceed, that's for the tribunal to decide.
Funny how everybody, like, it's just trying to convince everyone just to, oh yeah, just like we're, again, the bullying tactic and unfortunately, like it's like the way it was worded was this was squashed, this portion of it. So how you're saying that there's another chance to have another go around
There,
to like.
there's still a valid petition.
Never made, and your second should never made.
Right, so it's squashed.
Yeah,
So
no,
never made it to the floor.
there's still a valid
It hasn't made it to
petition.
the floor yet.
Wasn't voted on.
Yes, sir?
Hi, it's Michael Park again. I'm not speaking, I didn't speak in opposition to the report. I'm just saying we've fallen through the cracks and haven't been involved in the process. And my wife and I need time to look at these engineers' reports and look at and do some research into the impact it will have on our property. And we're just asking for that council give us that time. Perhaps just leave the
So-
report
so-
stand, but we don't want to cause any more cost for anyone at this point. We just
So-
want to,
I understand that, sir, but it's not our decision to do that. We don't decide who gets notified. That's a process through the drainage people.
yes.
And
I'm sorry,
And
go ahead.
as I stated earlier in the meeting, drainage is a very interesting issue, and it frequently leaves some people not as happy as others, because the people at the top of the hill, their land's dry, but they get to pay the costs of getting the neighbor's land dried out or the water better handled. And it's just the way the act is. It's one of the oldest pieces of legislature on the Ontario books, and it comes up for discussion many, many times when we get around to getting these drainage issues, but they need to be done. The land has to be dried. So I can't speak to who gets notified or not notified. But I think we have to move forward on resolving this issue here tonight. Either we accept the report as it is, or we ask for revisions. And I don't know that we have any revisions to suggest, is what I'm hearing here.
so then we're not, so then we don't have a right to be part of this process, even though it's dumping extra water on our property.
Well, as I just said, everybody that's at the bottom of the hill in rural country ends up with this on their plate at some point in time,
Mhm.
right? The water's at the top of the hill and it comes down, and the people at the bottom of the hill have wet land, and it needs to be resolved. And it
And-
is a very old piece of legislature.
And I believe we should have been part of the process and that.
We understand that. All right, thank you very much. So we're back to, can I get a motion?
So,
No.
I'll just note one more thing is that you still have 20 to 30 days before you still have the chance to argue and go to the tribunal if you want at this point, before the court of revisions happens. So there's the window there is specified in the act for this reason. Any discrepancies, it gives you 20 to 30 days to review and do what you need to do.
Thanks for pointing that out. We don't have the documents that we would need to take it to a tribunal because we haven't been included in the process.
The
If you would like to have your name added to the petition, this is your time to do so. You don't want to have your name added to the petition. Okay, so then nothing will change. Okay, so now we're back to the issue again.
I'll just note on this question there, the engineer's report and everything is now public information. We can provide it for you. It's online. No.
No.
It's,
Okay. Okay, any other questions, or can we move forward? Okay, seeing none, so we're back to, I need a mover.
So again, sorry, Ryan said that there are really kind of two options then for
Right.
motions. I
To
can
res-
read the motion again, that the council of the town of
If we
Minto
could just be clear.
provisionally adopt the engineer's report by bylaw in open session.
Is there anybody willing to move that?
Tried one.
I think we have a mover.
We have a mover of
Okay,
Ron, is
so
the
we need a
seconder
seconder then, sorry,
to get it on the
as a
floor.
point of
It's the
order.
best course of action, sorry. Second.
Okay, so we have a seconder, Counselor Gunson. You have a question or you're seconding? Oh, he's thirding it. Okay, we got a seconder and a thirder. Thank you. If we could put that to a vote, please. All those in favor? And that's passed. Thank you very much for everybody for their participation and contributions. It's been a learning afternoon so far.
If anyone here is for the drain and didn't sign in, please make sure you do.
He said that nobody told him, so there's no question. Yeah, I guess. He's- See, that's what I said first. They're not- they're not- Yeah, that's-
We shall carry on. Shall we? Yes. Okay, so moving right along from public meetings, I believe we have a delegation. Correct?
I don't think he's here.
Chris Langridge, I believe, is going to speak on behalf of Robert Harris.
It's a lot of pressure now.
Yeah.
That's who he is.
So you got a drain?
What's that?
You got a drain?
No, I don't. I wish I did.
Thank God.
Do you?
Seemed to be more interesting.
Are you sure you want to drain? Okay, so we'll ask you to present your delegation.
Sure. So Bob
Any-
Harris, oh, sorry.
If you just want to state your name.
My name is Chris Langridge.
Thank you.
You guys, oh, come on. So Bob Harris has a house at 5759 King Street in Harriston. He's applied to have the property severed a few times and we would like to try that again. But he can't be here because of vacation, so I am here on his behalf.
Okay.
I've never done this before, so you're gonna have to leave me alone.
Sorry?
I've never done this before, so you're gonna have to leave me along with what you need to know or what I need to do here.
So go ahead. CAO Fertney would love to jump in. here.
Perfect.
No, through Deputy Mayor Anderson. Was there more to your presentation this afternoon?
Not that I know of. I don't know what's been presented. Sorry, he's been on vacation, so they just sent me all the paperwork that they have on the application. I guess at the end of the day, what is it that we need to do to get the property severed? Because it's not to anybody's benefit to have it sitting there like that. So I don't know. They're at a standstill. According to the things that I have from him, he's done everything that you guys have asked that I can see. So having a semis built in town that you guys approved, that you guys had the drawings for it. It was approved like that. Everyone knew it was a semi. And now it can't get severed.
So if I could clarify, and I'm
Sure.
not the expert and we don't have our building supervisor here,
Yeah.
but I was here at the previous meetings. It was not built as a semi. It was built as a single dwelling with an additional dwelling unit. Anybody want to dive in and correct me, feel free.
Oh, I believe you.
So, and that was the issue. So it's not allowed to be sold as a semi. It's not a semi. The license for a semi, it was made clear to us at council by Terry,
Yep.
our superintendent, that it was not a semi. It could not be sold as a semi, and therefore it cannot come up for part lot control because of regulations by the Ministry of Conservation, the County of Wellington, as well as the Ontario Planning Act. There seemed to be some confusion on Mr. Harris's part in regards to that, but we listened to it being said in this office.
Okay.
I did challenge it at the next meeting when he claimed he was unclear of this. I said, well, it was made perfectly clear in this chamber. And he has asked to speak to most of us. He spoke to me.
Yep.
And I said, if you have new information and you have signed approval from those other departments, but he was shared a letter pointing out that the county would not support the division and that the Ministry of Conservation will not approve the division because there isn't clear access to the additional dwelling unit that's clear of the floodplain. The building is built on a floodplain.
Right.
Yes, it looks like a duplex. Yes, I understand that we need housing. Yes, I understand that he would dearly love to sell it as two separate buildings.
Yep.
But that cannot happen.
Okay. There's no way around it. Is that where we're at?
Sorry? Oh, sorry, sorry. Beg your pardon. Just hope. Gotta get along here.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Anderson. Process that we have currently is simply that Mr. Harris has to make a decision on his own,
Okay.
whether to go through the process again and pay the fees again or not.
Okay.
The staff position is county level, at the conservation level, and at the municipal level, is that nothing has changed since the last time we talked about it.
Okay. So he's aware though of the things that need to be done to make it accessible, like to be able to do it, or is it just an impossibility? Is that what we're saying?
Well, we're not gonna say it's an impossibility because it's not up for us to do that.
Right.
So simply put, my suggestion to Mr. Harris would be to, respectfully, he would need to make a decision whether he wants to go through the process again or not.
Okay.
And, we're not, staff, I'm speaking of staff, not
Yeah, yeah.
council. We're open to work with whatever we can.
Yep.
But we have the legislation in place that gives us direction one way or another.
Yeah, for sure.
Municipal council is step one, county council is step two, before we even look at part lot control or something.
So he's aware that what needs to be done.
I had a lengthy conversation myself with him
Okay.
last week as well. So we respect him. We respect what he's done for our community and in our community.
Yep.
We will work with him any way we possibly can, but we just need to get over the hurdles of the other legislation that's outside of the command of the municipality.
Perfect.
So, like I said, we respect them. We want to work with them. That's not an issue.
Yep.
It's just we need to go through the process.
Yeah, for sure. So that's why they have processes. Okay. That way we don't get into drainage problems.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
And then we move on to public question period. Sorry? Oh, sorry. All right. The deputy mayor, as chair of the meeting, has a duty to preserve order and maintain decorum throughout the meeting. Although council strives to hear and be responsive to residents' concerns in order to preserve order, maintain decorum, and comply with the town's procedures bylaw, I wish to caution any participants in question period that questions that use discourteous language will not be permitted. Questions that seek policies or bylaws outside of the town's jurisdiction, including policies or bylaws that might violate human rights legislation, will not be permitted. Anything that constitutes speeches or statements not in the form of a question will not be permitted. Repeat questions will not be permitted, including the repetition of questions from prior meetings. All persons shall be limited to no more than 2 questions. Is there anybody who has a question for council? And please state your name.
Roger Natchuk. I just noticed on your schedule for the next meeting is for March 18th at 3 p.m. I was wondering why it hasn't been changed to 7 p.m. to make up for the date that was canceled last February. Because when you guys decided to get rid of the nights, we were supposed to be getting 5 7 o'clock meetings. Now you got rid of 1, we're down to 4. So when is this other meeting for 7 o'clock going to be put in place?
CAO Brittany?
Through you, Madam Chair. So we have, council has already set the schedule for this year. We're just skipping over to continue on the process. So there's nothing more to be talked about unless council members decide to bring back the.
Well, they should bring it back because you guaranteed we're supposed to get 5 meetings and now you got rid of 1 of them at 7 o'clock. That's
As
not
I
right.
mentioned to you last time when you asked the question, we just purely didn't have the content to have a meeting, and that was it. So there's nothing nefarious about it. It's purely that we didn't have the content. So our next meeting, I believe, is
March 18th.
March 18th is the next meeting at 3
Yeah.
p.m. and the next 7 p.m. meeting will be in April.
So we're getting, the public's getting chipped out of a 7 o'clock meeting because you guys won't put it in. That's the way I see it. You're counting them out.
We appreciate your comments, sir, but we're still gonna continue with the process and the
Well,
schedule.
To me, that sounds corrupt because we should get that extra meeting when we were told that we would get five.
Okay. All right. We appreciate your point of view. And it has been taken under advisement. We're just maintaining the schedule that was already set at the beginning of the year. Okay, thank you. Correspondence received for information or requiring direction of council. Does anybody have anything they'd like to pull out of the correspondence we received? Nope. Okay, hearing none or seeing none, then we'll just receive those as information.
So there is a motion.
Oh, sorry, beg your
thank you.
pardon. I keep forgetting to do that. Moved by Councillor Gunson, seconded by Councillor Podnowitz, that the council receives the correspondence as information. All of those in favor? Thank you. I apologize for my slips there. That's carried. And then we move on to reports of committees and town staff, matters tabled and motions for which notice has been previously given. So committee minutes for approval, and I believe it's diversity, equity, inclusion minutes, and Mr. Duff is going to present that because Belinda's away somewhere where it's not raining or freezing.
Yes. Yes, he's probably having a great time with you.
I'm sure he
Not
is.
down in the meeting.
How can you have a better time than this?
Oh, it's tough,
This
but let's go. So, yes, we had our DEI committee met on February the 20th in the new Lancet space, which is good. We've had a very active start to the year, despite the weather. We had our Black Heritage event on February the 15th, which was really good. The weather was not, and we had a sellout, but we probably had about 20 people from out of town who couldn't make it, but we did have some walk-ins. So anyway, it was really great. Unfortunately, I was under the weather for the coldest night of the year, but again, spectacular event, first time in Minto. They had a fundraising goal of 20,000 and they more than doubled that. So thanks to the community and thanks to all the supporters and donors too. We do have an issue with the Clifford Food Pantry. It's just not suited to this kind of a winter that we've had. So I know Belinda is trying to work with the county and see if we can wrap something under their pilot project. It's a great idea. It serves a need, but the current setup is just not working, and we'll continue to work on that project. Tammy Cressy attended our meeting, and she's put together an inclusive calendar. She was able to do some research and find an example with about 450 different commemorative events, which is wonderful, but not really that practical. So she is distilling it down to about 3 or 4 per month, and we're trying to look at people that are resident in Minto who are able to take part or who would be affected by these meetings. So again, it's a work in progress, and we'll probably have a link to that other larger calendar too. We're working on an application to the County of Wellington for their accessibility fund. That's one of our strategic objectives, to do a downtown audit on accessibility. And I know that's a project near to your heart. And
Yes, I'd like to be included in that.
yeah. So we're going to work with it, and we've got our deputy clerk is going to assist us through that process too. So we're looking forward to that. And again, we had a little discussion on the action plan, again, trying to tie it back to our strategic plan objectives. And we also have a recommendation that was passed by the committee, and that's for the town of Minto to join the Canadian Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities. That was discussed last year, and again, part of our strategic plan. So an active committee, definitely.
Any questions from council? Councillor Dirksen.
I have a question about the Clifford
food pantry.
Yes.
Is the problem that people are putting canned foods in there and juices?
Possibly, and part of it, like with this terrible weather, like the door has like jammed open or closed.
Oh, I see.
And
Okay.
it just, we thought, well, if we could insulate better, that's just not going to work either. And yeah, there has been some inappropriate items, like it's a food pantry, it's not a clothing pantry, you know,
Oh,
those
sure, yeah.
kind of things. And
Like,
yeah,
I guess I was just thinking, if we could put a sign up that said, nothing that's going to freeze, like cereals, for instance, and
Yeah.
crackers and that kind of thing would still be appropriate. And I don't know whether we take paper products there. I mean, that's
Yeah.
things people need, but it's not food.
exactly.
But yeah, like if people, I just, yeah, but if the doors are a problem, then
I-
that's
Yeah.
beyond that.
Understood that accessing was actually a problem too. People couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
That's how the door got, so that it wasn't working. People
Oh,
couldn't get to it because it was frozen.
Right.
And a lot of the canned products, according to Belinda, froze. So they were,
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
really difficult to, I think, keep that in an outside environment.
That's
It'd
true.
be great if we could figure out the libraries if that project's working and if we could expand it. I think we have County Councillor Anderson working on that.
Okay, that sounds great.
Correct, County Councillor?
Thumbs up.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Podnowitz.
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor Anderson. In regards to that grant for the accessibility, is that just on municipal owned infrastructure or properties?
I
Is that-
think because, and Wayne probably knows more, because we're talking about downtown, we're talking about municipal sidewalks and then the accesses to the business. In general, you are correct. It is permissible because we've done, accessible doors in the arenas and things like that. But this is more to do like a study, and would tie in with our downtowns, which are public areas.
This will just cover the cost of a study then? Is that what you're
This
saying?
is just the study.
Oh.
This is just the audit, not the actual implementation, but we'll see where we're at.
Any other questions? No? Then I have a motion moved by Councillor Podnowitz and seconded by Councillor Elliott that the Council of the Town of Minto receives the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee meeting minutes of February 20th, 2025 as information and approves any recommendations contained therein. All of those in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. And then I'm going to pass the chair over to Councillor Gunson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Anderson. So 2 reports today. First one, various tender results, and Mike is going to present the report.
Thank you, Chair Gunson. Yeah, so this is just the results from the 3 tenders for the dust suppression, maintenance gravel, and then our asphalt resurfacing of various locations in the township. So for the dust suppression tender, we only received 1 bid. Daily Dust Control, they've provided this service for, I'm gonna say probably the last 8 or 9 years consistently. With this year, they did include a 3.1% increase over last year's price. However, it still falls within budget or a budgeted amount of 55,000 for that service. For the maintenance gravel tender, we did receive 3 bids this year. With a new low submission from Robinson Haulage Inc. With a 5.5% increase over last year's price. Robinson is they have 2 main locations, close to Collingwood, and Owen Sound is their other location. And then for our asphalt resurfacing tender, we did receive 6 somewhat competitive bids, with EC King Contractor being the low bid for that, which is the Murray Group, just under the new name. So with the with the asphalt resurfacing tender, it does allow a $100,000 buffer, with the total project cost coming in at $699, with a budgeted amount of $760. And then that also, within this tender, it also includes Henry Street, the top coat for it, which wasn't included in the $760. That's a carryover from our previous obligations to complete that project. if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
I'll read the recommendation first. Excuse me, moved by Counselor Zimmerman, second by Counselor Dirksen. The Council of the Town of Minto hereby receives report PW 2025-005 tender results, asphalt, gravel, dust suppression, prepared by the Roads and Drainage Manager for information purposes. And further, that the Council of the Town of Minto awards tender 2025-03, supply and apply dust suppressant to daily dust control for unit price of $525.65 per flake equivalent ton excluding HST. And further, that the Council of the Town of Minto awards tender 2025-04, supply, load, haul, and spread granular aid maintenance gravel to Walker Aggregates, Inc. for unit price of $14.75 per ton, excluding HST. And further, that the Council of the Town of Minto awards tender 2025-05 asphalt resurfacing to EC King Contracting for total of tender amount of $699,931.35 excluding HST. Any questions for Mike?
I have a question. So I'm sure you've noticed, as we have, the roads are bad. So are we gonna have to rejig our plans for what we plan to do this year in order to accommodate the number of repairs? Because there seems to be an awful lot of roads in not great shape after this lovely winter.
Yeah, so this is fairly typical for this time of year.
Oh, okay.
So
It just seemed worse than normal. to me.
Yeah. No, just the way that between the snowplow operations, like the overlap between the two happening at the same time, it does appear that way.
Okay.
But then once we get through the next 3 to 4 weeks of the freeze thaw cycles here, things will settle back in.
Okay.
Just like with the frost boils out there, there's some soft spongy areas. They'll settle out. There is some areas where like the entire road width is gone. Those areas will require a little bit more significant patch, but it's what's in the operating budget is still.
It's within our normal
more.
operations. I
Yes,
just thought
yeah.
we'd seen a lot of it this year. There seems to be a great deal. but-
Yeah, and it does vary from year to year. Some years the gravel shows worse than the hardtop or vice versa, so it's just where we're at with those fluctuations
Okay.
right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I just have a small one, Mike.
Mhm.
You had mentioned, just making sure we're passing this right. You had mentioned for maintenance gravel tender, you had mentioned Robinson Haulage.
Yes.
Is it Robinson Haulage or Walker Aggregates?
Oh, I'm sorry. It
Okay.
was Walker.
Okay.
Yes, I
You said they were the
apologize
low
for
one, and
that.
I'm like, oh, they were the high one, so.
Yeah. I
Just
had the
confirming I'm
location
reading it the right
wrong
way.
name, so yeah, I apologize.
Okay, no worries. So I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Thank you. That is passed. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Second report, municipal drain maintenance assessments. More drain stuff. Ryan, you're up.
It should be easier.
Yay.
Well, make this an easy one.
This is dessert, right?
Yes, hopefully this goes a little smoother. As you guys may be aware, once a municipal drain is established, it's up to the municipality to maintain it. Multiple drains, we've received lots of requests for some maintenance, and these are maintenance projects that were completed last year. They are on drains number 268 and 73, which they are, I have some maps including the locations of where the maintenance occurred. And along with the maps are the schedules of assessment for that maintenance. All the works were carried out by qualified contractors, and the final costs and assessments were calculated and shown in the table in this report. Also, we have discovered an error in the previous bylaw that was passed on December 3rd, 2024 for issuing assessment calculations on other drains, or one drain 107. It was a simple calculation error. Essentially, the drain has two branches that were included as maintenance in the schedule of assessment that we calculated, where the two branches shouldn't have been. It was just the main drain. So essentially, all we have to do is remove those branches from the calculation and reassess those costs. It was caught before we actually sent out the invoices for that drain maintenance. So luckily we don't have to do any money transactions. It's just simply updating the actual assessments schedule to make sure that it was done accurately. So that's just one little amendment that needed to be done. And then, yeah, so the financial consideration. The town is also responsible for all the costs assessed against the municipality-owned lands under the drainage assessments, and drainage assessments which are not paid upon receipt of any valid invoice may be collected in the same manner as property taxes. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thanks, Ryan. I'll read the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Elliott, second by Councillor Podnowitz, that the Council of the Town of Minto hereby receives report PW 2025-006 municipal drain maintenance assessments prepared by the drainage superintendent and treasurer for information purposes, and further that the Council of the Town of Minto considers passage of the related assessment bylaw and amending assessment bylaw in open session. Any questions for Ryan? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Get that one through quick. Thank you, Ryan.
No, thank you.
And I'm going to pass the chair to Councillor Dirksen.
Thank you, Councillor Gunson. And we have our yearly report of council remuneration, and I'll pass it over to our treasurer, Gordon Duff, to take us through that report.
Great. Thank you, Chair Dirksen. As you say, this is one of our annual reports that's to be done by March of the year following. This is the second report under our new remuneration policy, where the base is a little higher. And we also brought in some small benefits in the hopes of attracting more candidates to run for council. There was a little bit more uptake on the healthcare savings account, certainly under what we thought it might be, but a little more this year. The OMERS plan, again, it goes up as the pension administrators set the fees, so it's a little higher. Again, I know it's confusing because we're looking at a kind of November to November year, and then we're on a December year. So often there are timing differences between when certain councillors' pays go in. For fiscal year, which is calendar year 24, the expenses were 173,000 compared to the budget of 206,700. And then the details are on there. Again, the November to November amount is just under 190,000, which is also below the budgeted amount. So certainly take any questions.
Any questions on the report? Okay, I will read the recommendation moved by Councillor Gunson and seconded by Councillor Zimmerman, that the Council of the Town of Minto hereby receives report finance 2024-003, the 2024 council remuneration prepared by the treasurer for information purposes. All in favor? Thank you. That carries, and thank you, Treasurer Duff, for the report, and I will turn the chair back to Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Thank you, Councillor Dirksen. And we have a motion to return to regular council, moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Dirksen. The Committee of the Whole convenes into regular council. All those in favor? And that's passed. Oh, sorry, I missed announcements. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
You missed announcements.
I missed announcements. I'm so sorry. It was at the top of the page underneath the big title.
Wasn't in bold.
No, it
We'll
wasn't.
reverse that and go back to announcements.
Okay, so we'll go back to announcements. Councillor Dirksen, do you have anything?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. So we had the pancake breakfast for the Wellington Farm Home Safety Association in Elma on Saturday. It was a rather blustery day. However, we fed almost 300 people.
Oh.
And we had almost 50 volunteers there. So we had firefighters and police officers and various others as well. And so, yeah, it was a very good breakfast, and it was great to be able to talk to kids and their families about safety on the farm and in the home, and just variation on a theme. As far as announcements go, the Harrison United Church has a pancake supper this evening from 5 till 7, and that is donation based, and the money is going for kitchen renovations. And also the Palmerston, nope, James Street United Church, which is Palmerston. They have a pancake supper going on this evening from 4 till 6:30. And there's a charge at the door, $15 for adults, 7 for kids, 12 and under, and 5 and under are free. And they are collecting dollars for the Canadian Food Grains Bank. And of course, you probably know that all donations given to the Canadian Food Grains Bank are matched 4-1 by the Canadian government. So it's all about pancakes tonight. There you go.
Is it Shrove Tuesday?
Yes. Yes, it is.
There we go. Missed that. Okay, carry on. Councillor
Well,
Podnovic?
throw that away.
No,
Sorry.
just Zimmerman.
So anyway, next week is March break coming up, in case all you grandparents didn't know that. I found out. Wellington County Libraries have some pretty neat things to do for kids. I encourage you to go on their website and get registered. You know, I've got my 2 grandsons booked in, so we're good there. The other thing that I want to mention is it just hit the fan today with what Mr. Trump has done from down south. And I mean, we could talk a lot about that, even longer than the drain stuff. All I would do is encourage everyone in our community to spend your money in our community, in Ontario and in Canada, and let's keep it together.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott?
Yeah, just wrote a quick couple of things. Last Sunday, the Palmerston Skating Club had their carnival, and it was very successful. Really good crowd out. They worked with the new sound system. There's still a few bugs to work out, but on the whole, it's working very well. That same day, Palmerston 81s or Minto 81s played that day right after the skating carnival, and they won their game, the first game of the series against Seaforth. And the next weekend, they're going to Seaforth on Friday and Saturday night. And then Sunday at 6, they'll be back in Palmerston. And we're hoping they can repeat and become Ontario champs again. Really good club, a lot of fun. And what I hear about the Palmerston Skating Club, that they really got a good thing happening there. The kids are really enjoying themselves, and everybody at the carnival really had a good time.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor Podnowitz?
I have no announcements.
Councillor Gunson?
Just a couple quick ones. Minto minor hockey playoffs are underway, so if you want to go watch some playoff hockey, check the website out and see the schedule. And just the last 3 weeks, I think we need to give a shout out to the public works staff and all the white stuff they've had to deal with, and probably the residents getting mad at them. But shout out to them for all their hard work and keep the streets cleared the best they can when they can. So thanks, Mike. That's everything.
Thank you very much. I don't really have anything. He stole my thunder there a bit. I was going to give a shout out to the fellows. It has been a winter. We haven't seen a winter like this for quite some time, and I've watched some of them because I'm out at peculiar hours of the day and night. Sometimes I wonder why. And I see these fellows trying to keep the roads clear, and hats off to them. I don't think I'd be wanting to take a plow down some of those roads. Anyway, it has been quite a winter, and people just need to be mindful. We've had some bad accidents around with snow load. There's all kinds of things that we haven't sort of heard of for a while. So everybody be careful. And now we're talking maybe floods before it freezes, and then we'll have ice. It'll be great. Just a reminder, there's the bingo coming up at the Palmerston Legion, I think next Saturday, and the Farmer Market Trivia is on Friday. So as everybody can hear, there's all kinds of events to get out to if you want to get out into the community and get out of the house, because there's been so much snow, lots of stuff going on, lots of good things happening in the town. So get out there and participate and be involved. And I think that's it for announcements. So we'll go back to my motion to return to regular council. moved by Counselor Elliott, seconded by Counselor Dirksen, that the Committee of the Whole convenes into regular council. All those in favor? And that's passed. Notices of motion. Anybody have a notice of motion? No. So we have a deputy mayor, I'm reading my own self. Resolution adopting proceedings of the Committee of the Whole, moved by Counselor Podnowitz, seconded by Counselor Zimmerman, that the Council of the Town of Minto ratifies the motions made in the Committee of the Whole. All those in favor? That passed.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, if I
Yep.
may.
What did
There
I
will be a
miss?
change to the next one.
Okay.
Because we referred the report back to the engineer
Mhm.
for Drain 119. It is going to change slightly the resolution if you would like me to read it. for you.
Sure, that would be lovely.
Thank you. Moved by Counselor Elliott and seconded by Counselor Dirksen, that bylaw 2025-011, and that is the provisional bylaw for Drain 121, be approved and read a first and second time and provisionally adopted at open council.
And I'll call for the vote on that. And that's passed. Do we have to make a motion about the referred back? Or we already did that.
I think that we would not have to make a motion on
Okay.
that bylaw
All right.
because it's already referring it back to the
Okay.
engineer.
So then we move on to, where am I? Amend bylaw, 2025-012, amend bylaw 2024-066, maintenance assessments for drain 107. And 2025-013, drain maintenance assessments for Wallace Drain Number 2, municipal drain 68 and 73, moved by Counselor Zimmerman, seconded by Counselor Elliott. That the bylaws be approved and read a first, second, third time and passed in open council and sealed with the seal of the corporation. All those in favor? And that's passed. And we have motion moved by Counselor Dirksen, seconded by Counselor Podnowitz, that bylaw 2025-014 to confirm the actions of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Minto respecting a meeting held March 4th, 2025 be read a first, second, third time and passed in open council and sealed with the seal of the corporation. All those in favor? And that is passed as well. And moved by Counselor Zimmerman, seconded by Counselor Elliott, that the Council of the Town of Minto adjourns to meet again at the call of the mayor. All those in favor? Passed. Thank you very much, everybody, for a somewhat lengthy meeting.